take some time. And we are live on Oz Property Investors. We bring the big names and we bring the bagpiping broker. We're big fun. How you going, Aaron? Changed up.
I'm going really well, Jeff.
Yeah. We were talking. I think you're absolutely soldiering on. So I love that you're still committed. The show must go on. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. How you going anyway, Joe? You got your Schmick new haircut from Bada Bing, or saying?
Yes, I got a Schmick new haircut. Man, I'm fantastic. I'm super excited to have Aaron on, talking all things broking. I know that it's this crazy world with interest rates rising. What does this actually mean? But how do we're going to start talking about purchasing power, borrowing power, holding power. But yeah, one thing that I wanted to acknowledge is we're at 19,000 members in this group. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I was badges out and everything.
You got your Boy Scout badges out. Good. One for every 19,000. But I was thinking about this today. I was like, people in the group, like, what is this? So I was in Geelong yesterday. So I'm doing boots on the ground adventure, finding all, investment properties for the business. And I met up with a couple of members of the group. And I realized, I don't want to say, because I keep talking about my my experts in the group, and other people are reaching out to them and taking my good people for the team. So I'm kind of.
Tell me offline.
I'll tell you offline. But I was chatting to her, and she was like, the reason why I'm in the group is because I don't have anyone in my surroundings that loves property as much as you guys do. And I'm like, well, that's kind of why Jeff and I started this thing, because we didn't have property people that were fanatics as much as we were. And we just wanted to talk to experts like Aaron, and it's grown to 19,000 members. So it's always good. So great work, Jeff. And thank you, Aaron. It's people like you that are helping this thing.
Yeah, you are. I see the people you invite, and just the support is phenomenal. So we don't necessarily do it we do it for the freedom, Joe. We don't do it. We got to get the brave part.
I don't. I do it for the community. I do it for chatting property crap, right? Like this is the highlight of my week, chatting to you guys. It's awesome. And it's not everyone has it, right? Like when I was in WA,
I think you need to get some new interest, Joe. This is the highlight of your week. I mean, I like it. Don't get me wrong, but
I need to get new friends.
Well, you got to surround yourself with people that know about property, don't you? You got to learn from other people what their wins, their highs, their lows.
Yeah. And then you can learn from the mistakes that others are making, so you can, get better. Why learn from your own mistakes when you can learn from others' mistakes? And I think we highlight that a lot in the group as well. But quote of the week, I think we're on the quote of the week. Jeff, what is your, well, actually, are we going guest first? Guest first. Aaron, what is your quote of the week, mate?
Yeah. Whoever is happy will make others happy too.
Oh, I like it. It's philosophical, and it's not necessarily all about money. I like it.
No, it's kind of like you are the 5 people that you surround yourself with.
Absolutely. You're the average of the 5 closest people you spend the most time with.
Yeah. And if those 5 people are happy and pumped up, then you're going to be happy and pumped up.
And is that the thing, though? Maybe is it more about, Aaron, like kind of the happiness coming from within, though, or is it? Well, not really.
If you have a happy person come in a doom and gloom area, it changes very quickly. It just takes one person to change that room and make it exciting, make it fun, make it happy, and it's infectious. You throw some jokes around in the office here, and everyone will either shake their head or get involved or throw another one out, because I'm a bit of a dad joker in the office here. So, and I work with a lot of girls, and that always a bit fun to throw out the dad jokes.
Have a good dad joke.
And then you have to jump on the bagpipes and take it to that next level.
Yeah, it gets a bit loud in the office. I played them in the office before, got told to go outside. Played them in the car park, got a lot of attention. That was interesting. And I've done some little events with bagpipes on the roof as well for sunset and things. So that's always a nice little thing to get and unwind.
Yeah, definitely. Love it.
That's so good. What about you,
Jeff? Do you want to go next? Okay, so I'll go. Before we go, I want to tell people, throw your comments, likes. We want to get this information out to, and if you're watching on YouTube later, if you haven't been able to join us live, drop us a like or a comment, because I actually read those and I'll reply. But my quote of the week is, whoever has the gold makes the rules. So I think that, given that we're talking about lending and lending is sort of likely to tighten potentially with interest rate rises coming up, I think that's very apt in this environment, and speaking to the bagpiping broker. So for me, it's understanding, well, if somebody, whether it be a lender or a broker, tells you can't borrow, what rules are they playing by to change your to be able to borrow? Because ultimately there are going to be levers that you can pull, and we're going to talk about some of those levers tonight. And maybe it's necessarily you increase your savings, or you increase your income, or other things. You reduce your debt. I'm not saying to do those things, but because I'm not but there's some of the levers you can pull. So that's my quote of the week. How about you, Joe?
It's a good quote. Sounds like a monopoly. The rules of monopoly.
The banker reserves the right to print more money.
Yeah. My quote of the week is not really a quote of the week. It was just a something that I'm listening to an audio book. It's about a guy that who lived he had a terrible upbringing. He had, he's in the gangs and he went to prison and juvie and all of that stuff. And he turned himself around. He's now multimillionaire businessman. And he was talking about, he removed the words hope and wish from his vocabulary. So he's like, I do not hope for anything. I do not wish for anything. I believe that this thing is going to happen, and I make it happen. There's no hope or wish for me, because every time I hoped that I would have a meal at, Christmas time, it wouldn't happen. Every time I wished to, not get shot at, I would get shot at, and all of these crazy things. So he's removed hope and wish. And I think that's a good way to look at it. If you believe in going after this thing, then you're going to be more likely to have it, go after it. Because if you wish, it kind of puts the onus on somebody else, the hope fairy, rather than the belief fairy where it's you doing the thing. So I like that. It's not really a quote, though.
That's it. That's interesting, because you've got Jeff with the gold. You're going towards the goal without having a wish or a hope. You're actually doing it, and that makes you happy.
There you go. It's like we've coordinated these quotes without even doing it. How good are we?
There you go.
Fantastic.
The synergies. I like it. Okay. Well, first off, before we jump into our ad, we want to throw up that none of this is financial advice. All this information that we present is general information only and should not be taken for your personal situations. We're not financial planners or advisors, and you need to seek legal, independent financial taxation advice and check all the information.
Thanks, Joe.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I should probably record that so I don't screw it up all the time. Okay. Now we're going to go into our ad, and then we're going to jump into who is this amazing Aaron Whybrow, and why are we excited? Let's jump straight in. The amazing thing with commercial property investing is that in most cases, it's cash flow positive from day one, which means that you can drive those profits towards paying down the debt. There are instances with commercial property investing where you can actually have the property pay itself off over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. With commercial property, you get massive net yields, so you can expect anywhere between 6 to 10%. And as we've seen in the current boom, these properties not only provide large cash flow, they do certainly grow wildly in value too. Now, with big rewards comes some risk, and this is why you should de-risk your investment as much as possible. And the way you do that is with expert due diligence. And this is why we highly recommend people hire professionals to help you along in your investing journey. Steve Polisi of Polisi Property is one such expert. Being a chartered mechanical and structural engineer in a past life, Steve draws on his analytical and mathematical skills to do that expert due diligence for you. With 6 years experience in the space, Steve has over 1,200 property transactions under his belt. He's the guy you want in your corner, crunching the numbers and finding the best properties in the best locations, along with ensuring that you avoid the mistakes. Steve has actually even written the book on commercial property investing in Australia. And not only is it a bestseller, I believe it to be the most comprehensive in commercial property investing on the market today. He's been generous enough to give us a massive discount for our audience of 50%. So use the code OZPROP, click the link below, get a copy today, and start learning and getting on your commercial property investing journey.
There you go. That was our good old Steve. I think he's been in longer than 6 years now. We might need to re-record that. My good old Steve's starting to get some grey hairs in his beard. But no, I was chatting to Steve yesterday. But this is about Aaron, and you're telling him before you've had over 10 or pretty close to 10 years financial services experience. But you've had 3 careers in your life though, so that's amazing. And you sort of put it very eloquently when you say they're like each other. You've worked in intensive care pediatrics as an adult nurse, a medical sales rep, but you've got an MBA in business admin, a Bachelor of BN of nursing, a Diploma of Finance 4 in mortgage broking, a Cert 4 in training and assessment. And I think the thing that excites me most about you is you're a renowned bagpiper. That's the reason I was like, oh, this guy's a little bit different. I like that he's not just your run-of-the-mill broker. He's all about just kind of being a bit different, and that's why we support different. And
I've got a question, because you've done pediatric nursing and now you're doing broking. What are the things that you've taken, like, because they're 2 different worlds in my thought. Like when I first think of them, they're 2 completely different worlds. What kind of skills and things have you taken away from that you can draw into the broking world, if there is any?
Yeah. So it's interesting when you look at nursing and healthcare. The human body is so complex with so many different synergies, and when you go and have a look at it, it can look quite complex. Similarly with broking, some of the things that we deal with is just people. It's complexity, it's relationship, it's a whole range of things there that has that parallel. And the other parallel I usually put out there is that there's not much difference between nursing and broking. When you come onto a shift in an intensive care environment, you've got a patient or applicant in the bed, you've got numbers on the screen, you've got supporting documents in front of you to treat or to assess, and a story of what's happened to go along with it, and where we want to go. We don't want to go backwards to get the resus trolley, and we want to go forward so that we can get out of the intensive care environment. So it's all about, and that's where the broking comes in. You can walk into someone's house, you could have someone come onto a Zoom meeting, which is very common these days, or even walk into the office. They've got supporting documents on the table, numbers on a page, a person in front of you, and a story to go along with it. You've just got to untangle the pieces of the puzzle. Nursing in intensive care might be a bit quicker because you don't want them to go off the cliff to resuscitation, whereas finance probably doesn't have the life-saving effect, but it feels like a life-saving effect sometimes when, or it feels like that goal has accomplished, that they've got their first investment, or they've been able to achieve the goal that they thought they never did or could ever do. Yeah,
very, very well surmised in about a minute and a half. That's a fantastic summary. What else? Before I'm sure Joe's got 20 questions on the back of that, but I want to ask, what is the most rewarding part of broking for you? Which segment do you really get the biggest thrill out of?
I love looking after all the customers that get their approvals, because that's always a thrill. But one of the ones that specifically gets in there is the ability for working with a customer over the journey. So you see them as you get them into that might have been their first home when they were PAYG, and then you got them in their home, and a few years later they've started their business. They might have asked you about what their borrowing capacity could be, and then the business booms, and they're able to do and have options whether they're going to invest more into their commercial side, or whether they're going to invest into their personal wealth creation side. So I would say the best is the journey with the client that's with me for the long term, and then just supporting them with any of the product changes, policy changes, and things to be able to achieve their goal, whether they're buying leveling up their business to buy more assets personally, or whether they're using their business to buy more assets personally, and in this case, investment properties. That's really exciting for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, because it's cool, because you've been in the game for a long time, 10, 12 years. You get to see you get your repeat clients back, and you're like, oh yeah, we set this strategy up. And it is now we're acting, and we're halfway through. Now we're transitioning from, the capital appreciation into more of a cash flow focus. And you're like, yeah, this is the conversation. We said we would be here in 10 years, and we've done it in 5, or you've done it in 6, or whatever that is. That's super exciting. Yeah.
I have a feeling most of us underestimate what we can do. And I'm not immune to that in some aspects. So I think you give people targets, you look at where you need to go, and you look at past the first transaction, and you never know where people what they can achieve.
Yeah. I'm motivated already. Let's go. Let's go and buy a property. But no. So the thing we love to sort of ask people at first is, tell us about the first kind of property you have. Like, how did it also go, and what was involved, and then we'll kind of expand on there from the broking side.
Yeah. So just to throw a bit of raw honesty out there, my first home was my first home. That to live in. I did the whole. I purchased in 2005, and I got married at the same time. I came back from the honeymoon. I had the key, and I was able to open the door to my new home to live in. So that was really exciting. Lots of pressure when you do all those things together. I've seen clients do it from my side of things. I didn't have a broker at that time. I was an intensive care nurse at that time. The interest rates were 8% at that time. So that was really interesting. I had no idea what I was doing with money, but I could resuscitate you if you came to me and needed some help there.
Did you resuscitate yourself? God,
no. yeah, but maybe. Well,
how do you
try?
But that was my first one, and that was exciting and all that. We were in the wonderful Blue Mountains at that time.
Oh, where'd you move to?
So we're in Springwood at that time, and then in Sydney.
I'm from the Blue Mountains
area. Yeah, and now we're in the Big Smoke. And that was where I had limited financial knowledge. And if I go over the coming years, is where it really triggered that first property has probably got a whole range of triggers in it to get me into broking. So I was actually, over the coming years, I was actually engaged by some financial advice that was actually not financial advice, that actually got me. They actually frauded my equity. They frauded my tax. There was a whole range of things there. And it was only until until I started my MBA, and I got educated in finance, and I did a lot of finance in my master's of business, and I was able to jump and correct that issue. And the aftermath sort of got me to where I started broking, and I went, I don't want anyone to be advised on what happened to me to happen to anyone else. So I had to sell that property. I had to do a whole range of things. I had to recover from that. And really in 2011, 2012, I was able to start broking part-time and build up the experience and go from there. So I vowed nothing would happen to some of my clients like that ever again. So that was the big trigger for me, or the big crushing moment, you could say, to get into broking. And if you fast forward to now, like I've been able to build up some property investments and got a little bit more exciting and adventurous from there. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and you said they hooked into your equity. What does that mean? Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah, how does that happen?
Can we talk about this on a
that's
live?
different.
Well, what are some of the red flags we should look out for so we don't get ourselves in that type of situation?
So check that people don't take people at face value. Just check them out. And number 2, check everything that you're going to invest in. Search it out. There's so much information now. If you're investing into a company on or off the stock exchange, you can actually search everything out. Do some due diligence, like you were saying before, like in the ad, and now do the due diligence. Know what you're getting into. I was a nurse at the time, not a finance person, so step back. Nothing's urgent in finance. Step back, take a breather, and then get into the next step.
That's really, really sage kind of words. So I saw something in a group the other day, not our group, because they were offering an 80% ROI on a development, and I just said, I asked the question. I said, well, how are you actually like? Where's the how's this working out? Because I just don't know how this is sustainable. And they said, oh, well, we're happy to send you. I said, I don't really want to see the details because I'm not going to go and I'm not going to invest there. But I just said that concerns me and scares me a little bit and in that sort of situation, regardless of whether that's that 80% development ROI that somebody's offering or whatever it is, that I sort of think
concerns you because they weren't clear on the fees that they were getting from somebody else. Like they were making, you were wondering how they were making money out of the deal because they're like, oh, I'm going to help you. But oh, I'm just going to do it off the, the love of helping people. But it's actually, well, yeah, where's the incentive?
Yeah, and well, how is the deal? Because if the deal falls over, then you're not getting that 80%. You're getting, you might be lucky to get your money back. So, I think that's kind of And there's a whole bunch of series of questions I would ask around development. It's not about me though, but it's it's glad that it's interesting you brought it up.
Aaron's like, I know, yeah. This is actually about me, Jeff. Let's get this.
I only brought it up because it's what actually happened. It triggered to get into broking, and I'm able to change and affect people's lives now. So get it right. It might be boring and long term sometimes, but you got to get it. You got to do it the right way.
Yeah. Well, one question I've got is because you're getting married and bought a house. How has I don't know, what are some things that we can take away from intensive care nursing? Because I feel like you're able to deal with very high pressure, stressful situations that buying the house and doing all that stuff together at once is not really a problem for you. But I don't know, what are some lessons we can take away from that side of the fence ourselves? I don't know if there's an answer.
Sometimes we go for the long goal in a short amount of time. But when things go off the rails, you've got to shorten your goals. Maybe it's like I'll talk about it in the flu context. If you've had the flu, maybe just getting up out of bed is a goal. Maybe having a shower is another goal. And all those goals build up. So sometimes we have to shorten our goals to get the longer goal.
Okay.
Yeah. So when a hard say a person needs another piece of documentation and it's hard to get, well, let's make the call to the accountant first. Let's get that. Let's see what we need to do. Let's see what the response is from the credit assessor before we ask that. So shortening the goals to get a response to be able to make the most positive decision going forward.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today, actually. I was thinking that I have a ball and I pass that ball to the broker, and the broker then has to pass that, ball back to me. And if I don't get the ball back, I need to then call the broker and find out what's going on. But we always need to make sure that the ball is bouncing forward through the process. So there's always got to be a next step for you. There's always got to be a next step for the client to know where everyone is in the situation. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Maybe. I just think you need to. Yeah.
Or the hot potato is the other one for you.
There you go. Let's get our wiggle on.
All right.
I'm excited to have you on here, mate, because you're the broker, you're the broking man, and I don't know. We have a couple of topics to talk about. Jeff, where are we going first? Where are we starting this bad boy off?
So I think I really want to start with the meat and potatoes because that's everybody loves. I mean, for those who are vegetarian or vegan, sorry, we can get some broccoli and potatoes. But no, I want to talk about I think the first thing is the offense. So and we're going to break this into a couple of segments. We're going to talk to borrowing capacity, purchasing power, and then we're going to talk about holding power. So they're the kind of three core concepts that are going to underpin this conversation. So if you talk,
how can we borrow as much as possible? How can we hold it for as long as possible to be able to get us to our goal? And the other one was purchasing. How can we purchase as much as possible to be able to borrow as much as possible to be able to hold as much as possible? So I want to start off. The first question is, what's the difference between purchasing power and borrowing power? That's my question.
Well, this is so I see these more of when we're assessing to be in our offense. So we'll talk about defense around holding, but offense. So if I'm just going to go back to the Braveheart movie that I watched. I know you guys gave me the prerequisite to watch that last night, which I did on my own volition. If you've got a fortress and you're in your fortress, and you're going, okay, I can see the castle over the hill, down the valley, across over and I want to buy that. So the purchase power, you've sat in your castle with your team, and you're sitting around, you're going, which sword, which shield am I going to pull up, which extra heavy artillery is going to come with me to go and get that extra castle. And with borrowing, the purchase power is making sure that you've got accommodated all the extra costs associated with buying, your stamp duties, your buyer's agent fees, your legal fees, all those things, the rates, only like some of the adjustments that they make 3 days before settlement. You've got all that accommodated into your purchase power. So it's not what you actually can borrow, it's everything all intensive. And this really comes into it when you're leveraging off other assets for the deposits, to pay all the fees and charges that are needed to be paid to buy this place. So you actually need to make sure that you can cover all that stuff, so the client that has the goal of not exchanging money to be able to buy the next property can do that. So purchase power is that all-encompassing thing. You could even go down the path, if you're buying in your personal name, you got assets in your personal name, you want that to support the purchase in a trust or something like that. How you can structure that appropriately to be able to help the accountant make it a little bit easier, whether it's separate splits or whether it's making sure what's in the trust and outside the trust, so that they can account for it as the team. So you're in your fortress, you've got your people, you've got your plan of action, you accommodated all the costs and charges, you put the structure in place right, so then you can just bust out of your fortress, go down the valley, fight your way through, and buy that castle, because you've got to buy that castle.
Or castles. Let's
castles. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get one castle. There's 3 castles. So yeah.
There's so much to unpack there.
Yeah, well, one of them is that you don't need to overburden yourself with more than you need. Like that. Yeah. That's one of the things. Like I'm thinking in that analogy is, if you don't need, 500,000. If you want to buy a $500,000 property, you don't need to be sitting on $300,000 of cash or $200,000 of cash. You can, you don't need to keep saving for that long. You can continue. You can do it with a lot less. And if you already have a PPOR, a principal place of residence, you've got inbuilt equity in there that you could be able to use, and use maybe $30,000, well, maybe $50,000 of your cash, and then the rest of equity, and renovate the place and pay for stamp duty in cash and equity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And when you got more than one asset, that's where you have, that's like you're trying to fortify yourself in your fortress, and then you fortify yourself in your castle, and then you fortify yourself in the region or wherever you're wanting to buy. Yeah.
I like it.
You like it? There you go. So that's the offense. So you've really got to, you know everything. You've got your shield and you've got your sword, and you can get on the offense and other offenses to help fortify your offset. You might have you just talked about the equity and the cash available, but what is the variability in your income? So one of the bolstering of your offense might be, if you're employed, what about the bonus, the overtime, any commission income, any pay rises, right? I'll bring the example up now. We had a client that was feeling the pinch on trying to get the right amount of borrowing, and we said, well, is there any way to get any more income? And a couple of days later, they rang us up and said, yeah, I got a pay rise. I just went to my boss, asked for a pay rise, and bingo. I went, okay, let's just whack that on the calculator, and then we'll move forward. We've heard that people going and asking for even promotions and different things like that coming into the scene. So that's an interesting way to bolster your offense. You can bolster it by cleaning up debt outside of mortgages. You can look at other stronger profitability in your business if you're self-employed. You can bolster it by, when you're sitting in the round table with all your property team in the fortress. One of them probably an accountant to give you personal recommendations around, maybe it's structures that you need to set up so you can go past the first castle and you can get to the next one, and you can get to the next one, and you can do that in a better way. And then when you got your structures, that can be communicated back to the the broker to go, hey, well, if we're going to go structures, we're going to just tweak this right now so you can get that down the track.
Yeah. The way I like to think about it is like everyone's goal is financial freedom. We all want to go up that mountain. We all want to climb up the top of that mountain, and we all want to get there as fast as possible. But what I see people doing is starting off on that journey by themselves with no roadmap or no structure or nothing in place at the first, at the beginning. And then they lead up this path and they spend 3 days, 3 years hiking up this journey. And then they're like, oh crap, this is a dead end. I've got to go all the way back down and start again. Whereas if you create a team of people like Edmund Hillary, the first person to ever go up Mount Everest, right? He had a team of Sherpas that were helping him and going through, taking him up there. And it's a similar story with financial freedom. You want to go with people that have done the thing that they're an expert at and done it all before. And then you've got, your accountant. So what are some of the core people? That's a great question. What are some of the core people that you see your best clients focus on and have around them?
Yeah. So I think the main thing you have to focus on, the client has to focus on, is what are they good at? What is their time best spent at? And that's where it is. And that's why, like, if there's time best spent, pick on the nurses, because so if they're nursing all the time, that's where their best time is. They can earn more money, overtime, shift allowance, all that sort of stuff. Whereas they need to employ people like a broker. Lending is the key. If you don't have the cash, as Jeff's quote before, you don't have the gold, we need to get leverage from the lender. When we go to get leverage from the lender, if you're focused on bolstering your income, who has the time to spend an hour on the phone to the bank? Who has the time to run all the numbers? Well, you get the broker on side, don't you? You get your broker on side. They will do some borrowing stuff. And then how do you find the property is another one. Like, you go and, okay, well, you want to find the property and hurry up on that borrowing power sometimes is what we hear. And sometimes they give us a bit more time and sometimes they don't. Who's going to find the property for them? Are they going to go just knock on the next door neighbor? Or are they going to go down to the local real estate agent? Are they going to do that? So there's going to have to be a professional, and that could be a property investment guy, a buyer's agent, could be a real estate agent. But you've got to understand, if you need to understand the market and other things like that. And I've seen a lot of videos in the group about what is outside the front of the house. Where is the location? Have you seen the house? Have you not seen the house? And just, you need that person that focuses 100% of their time on finding the property for you. Your accountant's a great one, because they, depending, like if you're self-employed, they have a lot of your documents that are going to unlock the borrowing, like tax returns, other things that you may not be able to find. So that's a key piece. So we got broker, someone to help us find the property, buyer's agent, a property investment guy. You've got your accountant, and then there's a myriad of other people. Like you support people on how to buy the property. You got your conveyancers, people that can deal with title deed stuff, and any other complexities that you have to have in there. Like some of the deals we've got done in the past, where using residential and childcare and things like that, you might have to have agreements between entities and things. So you might need to have a commercial lawyer or any of those fields to come in there too. So your Knights of the Round Table, if we want to take the fortress thing, gets a little full sometimes, but they're all there around you to support you, and you've got to find those guys, and a little bit of time finding the right team will save you thousands of dollars down the track.
I was going to say, and girls.
Yes. And girls.
Yeah.
And girls.
And girls. Yes. Girls.
Yeah.
God.
Well, what and guys. Guys and girls.
Well, and these guys, yeah. Go on.
One of the things I see actually a lot is how important a conveyancer is in the property negotiations phase. Everyone thinks, oh, they're just, shuffling papers and moving deeds around and doing them, the council rates. But yeah, having a quick conveyancer that doesn't charge you every single time you need a deal, a contract negotiated is so good. And you need someone to move fast. You need them to move as fast as you do in these crazy markets as well. So and then the other one I think that you haven't mentioned yet is a property manager. A property manager, once you've obtained the property, while you're still got the property under contract, once you've signed that contract and got it under contract, that's when you're chatting to a property manager and getting those done. But obviously, when you work with a team of professionals, those professionals, you work with Aaron, you ask him, who's a good mortgage broker? He would say me. But say if he says buyer's agent, who's he going to refer? If he says conveyancer. So you just talk to one professional and then they're going to know other professionals as well. So it's not this difficult task to be able to get a team of people, but don't think that you can just go and do all this stuff yourself because you don't have time. You put in a full-time effort, you'll get a full-time result. You put in a part-time effort, you'll get a part-time result. So borrowing power. What is borrowing power?
So it's got a little bit of a defense and offense to it. If you want to put it, we'll put it in those terms. Borrowing power is now the equation that the banks use to lend you money. So income, living expenses, current debts, and your goal of borrowing. Now, that is such a varied position across a lot of lenders because we're in a competitive lender landscape. So with borrowing, this is where if we have a good understanding of where we're at, and to give an example around a borrowing power example is, I've been working with a client. They have great income. They have a good number of properties, and they have one or two or three lenders. And I look at their lenders, and a couple are majors, and one owned by a major. I just throw it out there, pick on the banks. They're big enough, they're tough enough. And most banks, when you look to borrowing power, they'll assess you the same rate. So whatever their advertised rate is, they'll add their buffer, and the buffer is 3% at the moment. All banks will do that for the new money. So at the moment, we have no difference.
So what do you mean? So can you talk to that?
Talk to that. So when you go to borrow money, say you're going to borrow $500,000 at 3% interest rate. Now that would be quite awesome for an investment property at the moment. There still are around. And then what the bank will do to make sure you can afford it in the future is they'll add 3% on that. So they're assessing your ability to repay that debt at 6%. So if the interest rate's now 3.5%, you're now being assessed at 6.5%. If your interest rate goes to 4%, it now is being assessed at 7%. And if you are looking at a fixed rate, for example, and you can see today some of the majors have put their fixed rates up by fairly phenomenal levels, and you're going to go get a 5% or a 5.5% fixed rate for 5 years, you're going to add 3% on top of that. So you can see where the numbers are going to start changing on you when you're going to borrow money. And all lenders will put this buffer in place when you're going to borrow money in new money. The differences come is when you open the hood, basically, what else are we going to put into this calculator? Then there's dependents, there's living expenses. Banks will change the living expenses. One will put them in a big bucket. One will put some in discretionary, some in general living expenses that everyone can do. Other debts. So you've got other debts where some banks will sensitize it with what you actually owe with its interest rate plus the buffer to get the outcome. Some will look at the actual repayment and put a buffer on that. And there still are some minor lenders out there that'll use the actual repayment, which all that will change the outcome of the calculator. The other one for property investors, when you've got more than one property, we're more and more noticing a lot of the banks when they look at if they get a chance to look at your individual tax return, at the back of it, it's all the expenses related to the property. So if we look at all the expenses related to the property, take the interest rate out, take the depreciation out, because we're dealing with the lending and depreciation is not something you pay every year. Then they'll take the rest of the expenses and divide it by 12. So they'll take your, let's say, $100 of rent per week. They'll use $80 of it with a 20% shading. Then they're going to take, say that to get that $80 per week, it costs you $20 in land rates and other aspects that
Property
landlords have to
management.
pay,
Yep.
that decreases it again. But there's lenders that do that and super analytical around how your properties cost you. And then there's lenders that just go, oh, we just shade it by 20% and don't look at that. So where you look at banks, they're all slightly different. And now we've gone into this phase of interest rate rises where we need to understand the serviceability calculators. It is really a serviceability calculator time of broking and bolstering borrowing power to bolster your defenses and help bolster your offense.
Yeah, that was one of the conversations we had with Bushy Martin last week, and it was about people that have a pre-approval right now for a set amount, and if you like, whether they should use it now or they should wait a couple of months for the market to maybe die down, and should I hold? Should I just be in this holding pattern right now, and or should I wait a couple of months? And what I got from it, not advice or anything, was if you've got the borrowing capacity right now for $500,000 purchase in 3 months' time, and interest rates are going to rise, and we've already covered interest rates quite a lot, but I would like to talk to you a little bit about it and what it means. But you will then, in 3 months, 6 months' time, hypothetically, be able to borrow $400,000. So maybe having the pre-approval that you've already got right now is a good opportunity to jump in before rates rise, and then drops your borrowing power a little bit, Mr. Hypothetical person. It doesn't exist. Not financial advice. Was that good, Jeff? Did I do that well?
I mean, yeah, financial advice is a slippery slope, Joe. But speaking of that, because I'm going through a process myself at the moment, but you'd sort of it depends on the lender as well.
It does.
So
Okay.
if you've got a pre-approval, some of the lenders will, if you've already got that approved, they will hold that regardless of whether rates go up, from my understanding, and then the others will reduce your borrowing capacity. So there's even a myriad more complexity, Joe. So it's not all that simple.
So this is in broker language, we call it the in-flight application. So this is like if you've ever watched Robin Hood Men in Tights, and he gets his super duper arrow and he's firing it at the goal, and someone knocks his bow off, and it flies up in the air. It comes down, it goes round and round and round and round, around and round and round, and it's got to find the goal. All right. So what I've found in the last few weeks of obviously having a 0.5% increase now changes your serviceability level up a bit more drastically than 0.25% is the in-flight application rules. So a lot of the major banks, when you submit your application, they will hold your assessment rate for the application. Some minor banks, once you've submitted it, you've got 90 days to get it approved, and then it's there. But I'm finding a subsect of lenders that unless you're approved in principle, or you're conditionally approved, or you're formally approved, you are subject to any rate changes as you go forward, and that's the rules that are happening. And as the RBA changes rates, we are proactively in the office here doing some servicing to make sure that everyone's still borrowing on the group of clients that are tighter on the serviceability, because a rate rise can knock them off. Or what are other lenders doing? We're finding some of the loan to value ratios that are out there where you get a lower interest rate for less borrowing percentage on a property are working good. And when you're up at the higher level, they're obviously pricing the interest rate. So that's changing your borrowing power as well. So you've got to be careful of the in-flight application rules of the particular bank you have your pre-approval with. Because right at the end of the pre-approval or the conditional approval says the bank can reassess or change, or if your circumstances change or anything changes, they can change anything at any time. And sometimes you've just got to remember it's not done until it's done.
Until it's settled, until you got the keys in your hand. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
it's unlikely that formal approvals, unconditional approvals get pulled, but yeah, I'm sure there were some during COVID, probably, and even before.
Yeah,
doing employment checks.
talking about bolstering borrowing power and borrowing a lot more, and it could have that feeling that you're borrowing well past your means. But what we're trying to say is that there's lenders that will give you a bit more and lenders will give you a bit less. And we don't ever want to put anyone past whatever their means are and their goals are to be able to afford going into the future.
And how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, so I try to start off talking with a client about what's the variability in the income? What do they have without a property? What is there? So if self-employed, for example, obviously there's a way to go get another customer, go get 10 more customers, and they're the judgment of that. So there's a bit more flexibility, variability, and we can see that in the lending products that are offered to self-employed versus the employee. With the employee, what is the variability in their employment? Is it bonuses, commissions, and all those things we talked about before? Or do we want to think outside the box and go, what about what a side hustle? Like if we've seen some of the influencers around the place, like side hustle, make a bit more income. What are you doing on your downtime? Blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. Like obviously that would take time to be able to use that income, but it's a genuine ability to help bolster your income. So if we don't have any flexibility, so if we do, we have a bit more of okay, what rental yield are we going to plug into the calculator to see what we come out with the result? So more fixed income, lower income may determine a different property versus on the lending calculator, whether the property is right or wrong, that's a different story on a numerical scale. Or if you've got lots of flexibility, you might have different types of appetite to property. So you might have, if you've got a big, massive PAYG income, you might have a different option of property versus someone that has more of a fixed rate. So it's that striking that balance on the numericals of borrowing power calculations.
Yeah, okay. You would have seen Jeff smiling there.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I've got a fantastic question here. Is Aaron's dad a maths teacher? I had a maths teacher called Mr. Whybrow, who looks exactly like it. Please be a maths teacher, Dad, please.
Oh, my dad was a technician. He is very he is mathematical. He's analytical in his approach. He loves solving puzzles. And I feel like that's where I get a lot of my stuff. He was not a maths teacher. No,
he was not your maths teacher.
no. There might have been another Mr. Whybrow out there. I know that Whybrow's not a common name, but out there there are. I've been to family reunions and stuff. I'm not the best at keeping people's names and things. I'm probably I would put myself in the male basket of that, but some males are good. I'm not, but yeah. So there's probably a Mr. Whybrow out there, but. Cool comment anyway. I think
not the right one. Not the right one.
No,
damn it.
No.
I had a question pop up in my head, as well as on the screen. But this one was around what's more important, minimizing expenses or maximizing my income? So like, should I just eat 2-minute noodles for the next 3 months and like try and boost up my income from the bottom up? Or should I just try and funnel in as much from the top? Like, what's a better way to borrow?
Let's pick on the expenses first. Every bank has a different benchmark on living expenses. Now, obviously, they will use their benchmarks, and every benchmark is different, and every bank has a different benchmark. So, eating 2-minute noodles and things may reduce you under their benchmark, but they're going to still use their benchmark. There are specific lenders that would put outside their benchmarks. They would put like health insurance outside their benchmarks, private school fees outside their benchmarks, which obviously tap into your borrowing capacity. So that's the benefit of using a broker, is that if you've got those expenses, maybe there is an alternative lender that you can put in there that would put it into one bucket instead of multiple different ones. But what you would be doing with cutting your expenses is bolstering your cash that you're holding on to. So that's a positive. Can you put that onto the calculator? You might be able to reduce your lending a little bit to come in line with your current income. With increasing your income, that's an interesting. I like the increase the income line because I think if we have in the marketplace at the moment inflation going up, minimum wages are going up, cost of living's going up, like income going up is probably that trailing thing that's coming up in the community. But I think if you can put more income in, that is the biggest effect you can do to your borrowing power, other than other debt outside what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, because is that because of something called debt to income ratio? There is a kind of standard rule around you should have a specific debt to how much income that you've got. I'm starting to hear that word get thrown around a lot more, and people are starting to think about it a little bit more. Is that the case?
Yeah, debt to income ratio is specific to the lenders that actually use it. And each have different milestones to achieve or not get close to be able to get approved. And even in particular lenders, self-employed might be judged lower than an employee as well. So that's an interesting aspect to bring in there. There are lenders that still don't have debt to income ratios to assess you on. It's just whether you pass their benchmarks or not. The thing that I feel that is going to come up is that when people choose principal and interest versus interest only, and to put this one out there is, I found a picture today of a Spartan. So the Spartan is like the sword and the flames and everything. It was so great. But I've actually accidentally put an N on the end of the acronym that I want to explain. So it's actually SPARTA, and it stops there.
Sparta.
And this is Sparta.
Yeah. And what it means is it's sensitized principal and interest remaining term assessment.
Oh yeah, yep. I understand what that means. But
so it's about how you're assessing your interest only proposal. So we've been on the rice and the noodles for our living expenses. We've pumped up our income. We've pumped up some cash. We put the number in the calculator, and we get this. Someone wants us to go interest only for 5 years. That means that the bank's going to assess you on the remaining 25 years as principal and interest.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the majors. I would say, I wouldn't say all, because I'm not haven't been a broker for a couple of years, but yeah, most of the majors look at it that way. And then it's some of the more niche lenders that are a bit more flexible in terms of how they look at interest only lending.
So not to jump over your debt to income ratio, but debt to income ratio, I feel, isn't as it's critical in some respects if you're if you're needing to go into a holding strategy, but the interest only is an interesting when it starts to expire is an interesting thing, or one of the defense conversations you have to have around that holding as well.
And when typically does a interest only period end?
Maximum periods we see with a few lenders 10 years. Majority we see 5, and then we see some tweaking underneath the 5 to make it all work. Maybe 2, 3s, and 4s. I see occasionally with people coming to me to look at assessing their home loan statements and things.
Yeah, because you need to be super careful around, like, if you get an interest only loan and then you change your job and that comes due and you can't refinance to be able to get another loan. And this is where the strategy comes in, with having a good broker and team on your side, I guess. But if anyone that bought a property 4 years ago, have a chat with a broker and say, hey, where the heck am I? Because if this interest only goes to principal and interest, what's the average? Is it like 45% extra on top, or 35?
When the assessment thing came in before COVID, we really didn't see the effect because COVID dropped the rates down, and it was still used as a sensitized buffer in the calculator. But now we're in the increasing rate environment. This is where it plays a bit more of piece of the picture with coming off an interest only, it could be 50% increase on your repayment. But if you were fixed and interest only, and your fixed rate was a lot lower than where the variable is today, your repayment could jump very substantially if you can't afford to reinstate that interest only loan.
Yeah, and that's where I've anybody sort of purchasing in the last two years or so, considering going interest only, should be very kind of wary of, and even people purchasing now, because I don't even think we've gotten back to, we're only just starting to get back to pre-pandemic cash rate now. So I'm not
hardly. We're at 0.85, and pre-COVID was 1.5%.
That's right.
Give it a couple of weeks. We'll get.
And I'm not demonizing like interest only. It's just a fact that they assess it differently. There are specific strategies that you can deploy for interest only. If you've in bigger portfolios or even smaller ones, or depending on other, we can get into the deductible debt thing, but we'll leave that one out for the moment.
Yeah, it's very handy for the acquisition phase of building a portfolio out. What creative tips does Aaron have for when loans are about to switch to IO, between IO and principal and interest? What are some of the tips you've got for?
Thanks for asking, Brendan.
Yeah, so I can give you my personal one. I had one of mine come off interest only from 5 years ago at the beginning of this year. What I found was, when banks notify you of things like fixed rates and interest only coming off, they don't give you the right discounts that you would normally get. They give you the 0.7 or the 0.8 that's there, when most customers are getting well and truly over 1. If we pick on some of the big fours, we're seeing a lot of discounts come out. So you can assess what the repayment's going to be and make sure they give you the right rate and go on to principal and interest. So it's not an uncommon strategy to go on to principal and interest. You just got to remember the principal payment's not, well, interest is the cost of the property, principal isn't. So you got to weigh that up with your advice around accounting and things like that. But moving from interest only to principal and interest, or extending your principal and interest term, most banks will have their discretion to be able to increase interest only without too much assessment if there's the right circumstances. But in the main, you're going to have to put your documents forward and get it all reassessed to reinstate interest only. And in the current upward trend of interest rates, if it's coming up now, I'd be recommending going to talk to a broker right away to see if you can sneak that assessment of interest only back in, give you another 5 years, and ride out the coming few months or years, or however long it's going to take. So readjusting your interest only now could be a hold strategy.
Yeah, great tip. Rewind that back, listen to that, and don't take that as financial advice. But yeah, that's a great little tip. Like, and a big part of what we're going to talk about in our we've got a newsletter coming up where we're talking about interest rates and things like that. And a big part of it is, don't put your head in the sand. Actually get out there, talk to the people, because it's going to happen. Interest rates going to rise. Things are going to happen in your portfolio that you don't want to happen, but they're going to happen. So the best thing that you can do for it is get educated around it, and have some professionals around you that can help you overcome those ones. Look at that. Someone preempted my next question, which was jump on the spreadsheet. Yes, everyone, jump on the spreadsheet. Jeff, do you want to throw the link in there? Because, it's not scammy marketing advertising if it's a free spreadsheet for a free newsletter for a free group. So I feel like it's okay that I pump my amazing, spectacular what if interest rates rise calculator, because I did a post about it. 350 people messaged and said, I want the spreadsheet. So I am very much in the process of making this making the spreadsheet. Go to propertyinvesting.substack.com and join the newsletter. Most of the people on this call will probably already be on there. And you'll be able to do it. It's free. It's free for me. I don't know why you're paying anything for it, but yes. Anyway, what's it called? It's the what if spreadsheet, and it essentially it tells you two things. It tells you what equity you have available, potential equity you have in your property, which I thought was a nice little add-on, and also what happens if rates go to 3%, what happens if rates go to 4%, what if rates go 5%, what happens if I change to principal and interest, and all the what if scenarios that you need, you can factor in, and really it allows you to say, where is my oh shit moment? Where is the point where I'm in trouble? And then you can factor it in. And most likely, especially for property investors, like, to be honest, our rents have raised 30%. We're going to be absolutely fine. The people that are going to be struggling are the people that couldn't afford, who overextended on their portfolios and went on a PPOR over $100,000, over $200,000 where they should have. But the bank still factored in your mortgage repayments based on 6%, on a 3% buffer on top of what you're already doing. So I'm not worried too much about property investors, but get educated and make sure that you know exactly what that dollar figure looks like.
Speak to your broker as well.
You can't be in the dark driving towards a cliff and then you stop and there's the cliff. You've got to know what's coming.
I'd probably get the map out before I even sort of get in the car. I'd figure out, okay, where am I going before I even start driving? But maybe I'm a bit more organized sometimes. I think it'd be great to talk about the holding sort of side of things. We've sprinkled in things here and there, but let's should we jump into our and leave that for after, and then we'll talk about SMSF, or maybe I don't know.
Is anyone interested in SMSF? Throw in the comments if you're actually interested in self-managed super funds, because
a little bit different.
Some a little bit different, a little bit bigger. Everyone has superannuation. Not everyone has enough to put in, and that's my first question: is how much do you need to actually do it, Aaron? We'll get onto that, but if you are interested,
speak to your accountant for that, or financial planner.
Well, we'll speak to your broker as well. Speak to everyone. Just chat to everyone. Let's jump into this ad, and then we'll dive on in. Selling a property. It isn't something we do every single day. There's actually more involved in the process than you may initially think. Like, how do you find the best agent? How do you ensure that you're going to pay the lowest fees? It's not easy, and then also throw in all the stress and pressure of selling. And that's why Scott Agate, a former real estate agent and expert property negotiator from Hello House, has created his leading agent finder service. After a 20-year career managing agents himself, Scott has personally conducted over 3,000 property transactions, along with running 3 Bell franchises. He knows all these agent tricks. Scott has created an in-depth 5-step process for his leading agent finder service. First, he establishes the true market value for your property. He uses a triangulation method to shortlist the leading agents, creates a competitive environment for those agents to send through their best proposals, vets those proposals, and then he negotiates the best agent fees for you. This ensures that you're not only getting the best rate for selling, but most importantly, you have a leading agent on your side selling your property to maximize the end sale value. Oh, and did I mention this service is completely free? If you'd like to know exactly how Scott runs his 5-step leading agent finder service, he's detailed it with the link below. Or if you'd like to speak with Scott to help find you the leading agent in your area, book a call today.
We haven't done that one in a while. Good on you.
I thought I'd mix it up. One of the questions I had, Aaron, going back to talking about side hustles and things, because there's different types of income. Can you talk to the different types of income? Because when I was as a PAYG, and I had a van business where I owned multiple vans, and they drive around Sydney and they do the thing. But they counted that as a business. They didn't count it as like normal income. So I had to have 2 years worth of financials before they factored that income as a thing. However, I was a salesperson and I got commission. So like those two incomes were counted differently. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. Self-employed PAYG, that one of the pros that you have with PAYG is that there are lenders that you could just go out and get an employment contract that's permanent part-time, get a pay slip and a contract, and bingo, we can get some borrowing on the table, application started. But if you go out and you start a business today, bar some industries or where some other history factors that can come into assessing, you're now self-employed And the mainstream lenders are now going to look for, hey, you come in the door, they're going to go, hey, mate, come back in 2 years. The problem I find with that one is that with people that have gone self-employed, usually after a few months, they're kicking some goals and they're moving forward anywhere between that 6 and 24 months of ownership. They really need to engage a self-employed broker to be able to look at how they can where they need to have their target incomes and other things to give them not only a target on what they need to deposit on a property, but where they need their incomes to be. Because what I find is when a self-employed person goes into the bank, they say, no, mate, come back in 2 years. They come back in 2 years and their financials are, they got a loss in the business. They got no income coming through. They got nothing. And they then go to the bank and go, well, you told me to come back in 2 years. And now I've come back in 2 years and why can't I still borrow? And then you get that frustration because business is a personal thing. Like it provides you income, it provides you financial freedom. It provides you a place to work. You might be employing people as well. So it's a personal thing that provides you income. So when you get told no again, it's not really happy stuff. So
yeah,
usually
so
2
I'm
years
actually
self-employed.
So I'm going through that currently because I run a business, right? I run Property Principals Buyers Agency, best buyers agency ever. Everyone, be my client. No, I'm just kidding, Jeff. I'm just kidding. But what was the point of that? The point was to say
you have to wait. This is the point. Yeah.
You have to wait.
Set it up.
Yeah, exactly. I have to wait 2 years before I can borrow. But the biggest thing is speaking to my accountant. I was speaking to two accountants because I was finding my accountant. Who's going to be my accountant? Who's the best person to deal with? And we've got some great people in this group. And I spoke to many of them. And one of them said, the benefit of being in a business is you can write everything off on tax. You can write your food, you can write your electricity, you can write all of these things off because that drops then you're having an expense, but that then brings the value of your business down. Which is great because I then get I don't have to pay as much tax because I'm lowering my, I'm increasing my expenses, which is then lowering the value of how much I get in income at the end of the net position, right?
Yep.
Sorry. But if I do that, I then can't borrow as much. So I need to not reduce my expenses as much as possible. I need to show balance and a net balance of, lots of money at the end of the year, because that's what's going to allow me to continue on. So there are two kind of schools of thoughts out there from accounting perspective is one, minimize your tax, write everything off and live a great life, but you won't be able to borrow necessarily as much. Or two, suck it up, pay the tax and have a big balance sheet and income statement and be able to then borrow money. So it sucks.
I've never understood the first line of thinking. Like, why would you, like, if you're reducing,
if you don't care to borrow, like if I don't want to borrow property ever, I would want to minimize my tax as much as possible. So if you're not into borrowing money, which is why 98% of accountants recommend, drop your expenses, like expense everything. But when you want to borrow to buy property, you need to speak with an investment savvy accountant that has property and understands the leverage that you can get in accounting. So that's a big lesson that I took away from moving from PAYG to self-employed.
There is alternative lending out there for self-employed. So people that I have been in business GST registered for 6 months, and they've got 2 quarters of business activity statements, and there's an absolute need. Family needs a home, need to shelter up, need to move, and there's a whole range of personal reasons there. That there are lending options for shorter term self-employed or businesses that haven't got all their financials up to date. So there are some offers and options out there for people that are in those positions. But yeah, if you want the lower cost lending, you're going down the path of needing one of the big 4 banks only needs 18 months in the main, 24 months for everyone else, so that you can get down the nitty gritty of the borrowing that you need. If your combination side hustle, self-employed plus PAYG, well, we've seen it before. Can we afford it on your PAYG wage? Do we need your side hustle in there? those questions come out when you go to see a broker, when you're assessing your borrowing power.
So what's the let's just say you don't need that side hustle income, but it helps things. Can a lender say, we'll actually consider 50% of that income? Oh, I mean,
no, it's in or out.
No, because I'm just thinking, because having worked, and I sort of think, well, I think from a risk mitigation perspective, so I'm just
We've
Okay.
teased.
We're giving a hurry up.
We've
Get onto
teased
it.
we teased the
on.
SMSF stuff, and then now they're like, okay, cool, yeah, I don't care anymore. Talk to SMSF.
So a therapy session about how we can't borrow. So,
yeah, well, I know I can borrow now. I just need to now just suck it up and pay tax, which is good. You know, I'm paying for the roads that I'm driving on. Okay, high level, Aaron, how would you explain and self-managed super fund and what it actually means? Just so for the people who don't know, what the heck is it?
So everyone that is employed or pays themselves a wage, there's superannuation payable either from your business or from your employer, either included in your package or excluded and over and above. So that goes into a superannuation fund. Most people will have something that's not a self-managed super fund. So what is a self-managed super fund? It's basically, if you are set up and you've got a self-managed super fund, you can actually log in and see your bank balance and make payments to whatever the self-managed super fund needs to pay for. That's really scary. In essence what it is. It's self-managed. It's the definition of self-managed super funds in the name.
Okay. Yeah. And there's a lot of rules and restrictions around. Yes, very it's very scary. Like, you've just handed me superannuation, the stuff that I'm not allowed to touch. I feel like there would be some rules and regulations.
Rules, So I can talk about it from a lending context. So there's advisors out, so financial planners that are accredited to do self-managed super funds are great resources to talk to. Accountants that actually, when they get the advice, are instructed to set up a self-managed super fund because they set up the structures. It's set up like you would have like a trust and a whole range of other documents there. Those people are great resources to see how the structure works, how you can operate and manage it, how you can not be in the scary position of logging in and you can see your super money, where you can actually have some structure and have some people that we were talking about before, where we need a broker that does 100% of the time to jump on the phone for an hour. We need a buyer's agent to go out and check out the right resources while we're working. Maybe you need to have the other advisors to help manage your self-managed super fund. There you go. So that's the compliance piece there. From a lending point of view, what are the rules? Most of the time we can borrow typically anywhere from a few percent of the property's value right through to 80%. So self-managed super funds are a vehicle to allow you to borrow money. You can borrow money to buy an asset. That's the mechanism. The asset has to be a single asset to meet that super test, and then we can put a couple of other structures in place for your super fund to be able to borrow money to pay for that aspect and leverage your super to leverage your freedom. If you want to put it that way.
in 30 or 40 years, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly, because you're not going to be able to touch it in that time. But what does Aaron see as the sweet spot for age for an SMSF work as a part of a portfolio? Is it an age thing or is it a number thing?
I think it's a number thing. So on observation, I've seen a lot of borrowers or property investors out there buy in their personal name, and they then hit the wall of serviceability. And they get the right advice and see the right professionals and find that their superannuation contributions plus rental income with borrowing can help them keep investing. Now, I'm not saying everyone's suitable for doing it. I'm just saying that when you put the magical equation in to borrow money in super, you can borrow money based off the rental income of the property and your superannuation guarantees that are deposited in.
Yeah. Okay. And what are some of the? What's the minimum we need to kind of kick? Like, what's worthwhile? Because
Yeah. So to put logic behind it, so from lending rules on what's the minimums, maximums, all that sort of stuff, lenders have minimum rules. So some lenders will have whatever your loan amount, a percentage of your loan amount has to remain in the balance of the super fund post the transaction.
Yep.
Some lenders will have a minimum balance to have to play at the game. And one lender in particular would probably have 200,000. Other lenders might have 120,000, but there are lenders that I deal with that don't have a minimum. All right. So
yeah.
the definition, this is where self-managed super fund, the definition is self-managed. So lenders have some restrictions, other lenders don't. The ASIC guidelines are out there, and they change a little bit all the time. How they are interpreted into some of the financial planning land changes all the time. So I would stick to the lending criteria on what self-managed super funds can do. So, but if you want to put logic on what's the average market price of a house, if you're only allowed to get 80% borrowing in super, and if any of those policies change and it goes to 70, so you probably got to think about that. You're going to have to think about, does my fund have 20%? Does it have the purchase power costs like the stamp duty and the conveyancing and the buyer's agent fee, all those fees? Like, you're going to have to think logically behind what is ability to achieve, and then get the right advice to see if that's a right viable option for you.
So minimum would be, like, I've heard minimum to be, I think it was like a 250,000. No, that seems like too much. Like, what's the smallest self-managed super fund you've seen?
I've seen the ones that they unwind and go back into retail, and that was about 60, where they said, "Oh, can I buy something at 60?" And they had it all set up. They came to me to see if borrowing was there, and there wasn't much, and the market didn't really maintain the 20% plus cost to be able to buy at that time for their thing. I believe the outcome of that, they went back into a retail fund.
Costly exercise, that one.
That would have been very expensive.
A lot of clients that are advised and they come to us to do self-managed super fund policies, lending for properties, are usually over the $100,000 mark. We see 130s, we see 150s. I've seen 700s. There's such a varied thing because super is such an investment for your future, and it's a highly personal, advisable area of the market. Everyone's slightly different, and they walk through my door with different balances. So, so I can't really advise what the right balance is, but you can take some logic behind the scenes related to the market you're buying in. The other thing with self-managed super funds is that you have more than one member, or you have one member.
What do you mean?
So
when you can have up to 4 from what I understand. Six there you go.
Now.
Increase.
So I've recently settled a loan for a 4-member self-managed super fund, and it was a very old super fund. So it gets a little bit document intensive on my side, but that's the fun of the game. I love doing the self-managed super fund lending side of things, and you can do residential and you can do commercial. So you can bolster together with a wife, de facto or whatever, and combine supers and things like that. So those things are another personal advisable thing as well.
So you can combine your super and your partner's super and have one super duper fund.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling us.
Make it super duper duper.
Okay, that's cool. One thing that people don't initially, what are some of the things that people don't think of when they think of self-managed super fund? One of the things that I've heard is that there's a premium on top of the interest as well, that you have to pay for the lending. Is that the case?
Yeah. And it's slightly higher than some of the commercial lending rates now. So only as recent as today, I was talking to a client where we are actually going for some retention pricing on his self-managed super fund lending because it was about to hit 6%.
Yeah, gee, that's...
And and they're not big loans. The lending that's the self-managed super fund close to me is it's now sitting just under the 6 mark, but we got some retention pricing on that, and it's come down a little bit to accommodate future rises. Some of the residential stuff, so it can be varied. The rates I've seen can be varied from the 4s through to the 6s and the 7s, and if you get a bit sticky with needing to fulfill a contract that's already in a setup SMSF and there's some credit issues and things like that, there are lenders for that as well, and that pricing and those rates can be quite up there to be able to accommodate and protect you from an impending contract coming at you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
And
so they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that's something to think about if you are. It's not a straight. I mean, first you've got to actually pay for the SMSF and get it set up, which is thousands in accounting fees to be able to actually do that. You're going to get restricted on the amount of percentage. Like you're going to get charged more of an interest rate. So is this why I see more like positive cash flow is more what I see going into self-managed super funds? Why is that?
It's a numerical equation basically. If everyone can open up Google today, get a borrowing power. There's only one thing you can't put on a borrowing power is called capital growth. So, and with the higher interest rates and the higher compliance costs on the self-managed super fund, and because the superannuation guarantee is only 10% of your income in 2022 currently, as the rules are, you've got 10% of your gross income, whereas outside of super, you have 100% of your gross income with whatever employment contract you're on. So you've got 10% going in and you've got the rent. So where is the variability? So we talked before in the conversation, where is the variability? There's not really much variability. It's all sort of fixed. Yeah, there is super on bonuses and commissions and things like that according to the rules, but there's not much variability. So that's why a higher yielding property is usually what we see in a trend in self-managed super funds.
So, but that's because you can't
get the borrowing.
Chip in. You can't get the borrowing.
Yeah, if you need the extra income to get the borrowing.
Yeah, because you need to be able to show that it does service.
Yeah, there are the lenders have rules around whether you want to salary sacrifice, whether at that salary sacrifice or personal sacrifice. There's different inputs on the calculators. There's rules around whether you decide to do it in the future and what evidence you need to meet the lending policies for that. And that's got the residential side. And the other side is that you can actually buy commercial property in your superannuation fund as well, which obviously from the ad that we had at the beginning of the scene with extra yields that you can get out of those properties, that's an interesting option from a lending point of view too. So that's really you can only put the numbers down to get the borrowing to work, and if you're only using 10% of your income and 100% and all the rental, you've got to take that into account.
Yeah, kind of like, who said this? Mr. Hayden West. Lower LVR in super, I feel, because there are things that get a bit tight on the cash flow basis. You don't want to worry about having to prop up a property in super. Commercial is the go. And I imagine you see a lot more properties going in the commercial in super, but also high cash flow properties like duplexes and units and unit blocks and those type of assets as well, when a commercial might not be suited for that person.
And I deal with a lot of self-employed business owners over the journey where they've now they've been PAYG before, and now they've got their business, and now they have the landlord knocking on their door to kick them out, and they now go, well, how am I going to control this commercial rent hike or anything like that? And the lending rules is that a super fund can buy a commercial asset, and then your business or company structure can rent it off your own super fund.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that. There you go. Rent your place. Why buy when you can? Why rent when you can buy it from your super?
Yeah, and it's not financial advice. It's actually what lenders' policies are. So it has to suit people, and you have to get the right advice. I can't stress it enough with talking about self-managed super funds, because if you do the wrong thing, the ATO's after you in big way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
The penalties are very steep for non-complying SMSF. It's you don't want to mess around with that, not whatsoever.
Yeah, but good comment.
Yeah. Another question about super, but I lost it. So sorry.
It's super.
I think we're supered out, Joe. Let's get, because there's somebody raised something, and I'm sure there's going to be, everybody wants to know about trust.
Oh, here we go. Hang on, look at this. Before we talk about that, here's a great question. It's not possible to extract equity in an SMSF refinancing. Do you see a lot of flipping when LVR is getting down?
It's a with super, the rules are you can't get equity out, you can't have redraw. They treat it as a pure asset, pay it down, and it's paid down. So the only things I've seen is that they might sell it to realize the income to have deposit to go again. So
within the super.
Within the super, yep.
Yeah, you can't just pull it out.
Yeah, there's no pulling it out. If you've got to be careful, and self-managed for the right people's good, partly managed with the right advisors is great as well. So yeah, you can't pull out equity. When you refinance in super, the only thing you can do is accommodate the fees, charges, and interest that are incurred on the loan to the date of you settling on your refinance. So that is possible, and there are competitive rates and reasons why you would want to do that.
Yeah, and also remember, you can't touch this until you're at preservation age? Until you hit that super age, which is currently, was it 65 or 66 or something?
It keeps changing.
Yeah.
Which government's in as well?
Yeah, by the time we get up there, it'll be
basically probably a long time, Joe. Let's just say.
So you won't be able to actually touch any of those funds. Like, it's great to build them up and do that kind of stuff, but don't think that you can then grab the equity out and then bring it into your real life and real world. Well, you'll have to wait for the next pandemic where we can withdraw $10,000 out of it. Like, that's the only way. And the first time, I think it's the first time ever we've been able to get access to our super. But there you go. But yes, there was a good question, because one thing that I heard in the grapevine back in the day was that if you get a trust, you can continue lending. You hit a glass ceiling, and Quaid has asked, I hope I said that right. Can you talk about trusts to get around the serviceability limitations?
Cool. So setting up a trust, obviously that's for the people that advise you to do that. And we talked about the Knights of the Round Table and having the right decisions before you go out and invest. And if trust is something that's there or in your future, to have the lending strategy tweaked for what you're trying to do now. So trusts outside of super, which is really cool. We're coming outside the super. Outside of super, we have the standard lending rules back. So we can do redraw. We can do, in some lenders, have offsets. So some of that product spectrum comes back into our control a little bit, but we've still got an entity, and then we've got our personal banking. We've got this trust area. Keeping it passive and putting properties in there is a common strategy that I see a lot of times. So in short answer, if the trust is profitable and you're not using its income to borrow in your personal name, you can typically exclude it, including all the borrowings that are in there. So I've just reversed the question.
I'm not sure why you're confused. Tell us.
Yeah. No, because I just want you to say it again. Actually, I was like, how can I rephrase this question? But just say it again, because I think that's a big.
I'm turning on it so people look at their trust to see how they can to get rid of their personal life. But really interesting, I'm going to flip it on its head. If you've got a trust and you've got a bunch load of properties, bunch load of lending, and every year it's profitable, and you're not using that profitable income on your personal balance sheet to upgrade your family home or do something else in your personal name, if it's profitable, you can with certain lenders, and accountants' letters state that it's profitable, and you can exclude that and bolster your borrowing capacity in your personal name. So that's probably the most common I see. That's the same principle as SMSF. So the borrowing in your SMSF doesn't impact your personal, and vice versa, unless you've changed some of the there's some extra information in there that we'll go into in a personal thing. But if we unpack that further, starting a new trust, so where I'm finding a lot of people starting a new trust. When you start a new trust and you're trying to get you're getting the borrowing, you're getting a few properties in there, maybe you've started with residential, the directors are the guarantors. So the director's income on a brand new trust are going to have to support it to borrow for the first couple of properties that you buy in there. So your income to support the borrowing in the trust, and the trust gets the thing, and then you're up and running. And that's usually used for the first few purposes where you need some of the outside support to get the kickstart this thing. Like, you got to have the starter motor to start this trust up.
Yeah, you can't be unemployed and create a trust and then borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah,
and I think the being a director and a whole range of other things could come into that with the Corporation Act. If you're looking at the trust as the passive investment, this is the other one. I'm going to flip it on its head again. A trust that has a passive investment that owns all its property outright and has income from it, that income, according to the bank's rules, could bolster your borrowing power outside the trust too. So if your trust is thrown off profit, and you want to use it and there's no lending in the trust, you can actually bolster your borrowing power as well. So we've seen that with customers that have share portfolios and properties unencumbered and things that have profit coming off that trust as well.
Does it have to be unencumbered, or let's just say it's sort of 60% LVR, but the rent is climbed, or
you just have to take into account that rent, that borrowing. Yeah. So where you're looking at the trust in isolation, this is where we can get into the funkier the assets. So if we pick on the easy one, if you're borrowing a commercial property in your trust and you've got the money and the deposit and everything ready to go, there are products out there that will just look at the asset on its merits and the trust on its merits to be able to borrow. But it's also going to be determined on the age and the policy of the bank, that age of the trust and the policy of the bank that we're going to look at those, and the product type that we're going to look at those types of lending. It does open up because trust's got an ABN, not necessarily that the person can have an ABN too, but a trust having its own ABN, being a special vehicle to hold passive assets, just has a lot more of that personal asset protection feel. But the navigation around the borrowing can be quite interesting, where one bank wants to see the whole group servicing, so personal, trusts, everything. Typical products may not want to see anything except for that asset and what it's producing. And then other lenders, again, looking at how a trust can be isolated by itself without the personal side of it. But just remember, when you're borrowing in a trust, even though the applicant is ABC Proprietary Limited as trustee for Trust ABC, there's still a director, and that director has to guarantor it, because the lender will lend to the applicant, but they always want to know who is the person that I can come after if you don't pay your loans.
That's personal guarantee. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So my question is, why doesn't everyone straight off the bat just get trust? Like first investment property, trust it. Second investment property, trust it. Third, trust it. Then
you need 20 or 30% deposit, right? I mean, so
no, not necessarily. You can get mortgage insured products in trusts.
Okay. So why hasn't everyone, like, why are we not doing that? Like, maybe the answer is, yeah, you should be. Go out. No, it's not. But like,
it's a personal thing again. So even though it's not as highly regulated as self-managed super funds, where it's got a whole range of things, like only 10% of income, like there's a whole range of metrics on serviceability for trusts, but there's a compliance piece still. So you got to maintain this vehicle, this engine of like what are the accountant fees? You've got to set the thing up. You've got to maintain the tax returns every year. A trust typically when you've got profit has to go somewhere. I'm not an accountant. I'm only a broker. So those questions can come into an accounting field. So it's how you want to manage that income, and it gets into that accounting area. But from a borrowing mechanism, we can go into mortgage insurance. We have products with offset accounts. We have the ability to even leverage off equity in your personal name to help support borrowing in trusts. We can do all these funky things, but the piece of advice about why doesn't everyone have a trust is that it's not suited for everyone. So it's like a trust is suited for everyone, but everyone's not suited for a trust, and they need to seek their own advice and guidance on what they're going to do to have a trust or not have a trust. But understanding that the lending metrics are still there, you've just sometimes got to get into that property investment, mortgage broking, self-employed mortgage broking brain to put those options on the table as you're advised to have a trust to hold property.
Okay. So
roundabout way.
Yeah. So
it costs money, Joe. That's why not everybody would suit a trust. That's
I want unlimited borrowing capacity, because that sounds like what I'm getting. You get a
how much does
Kickstarter.
it cost you though, Joe? Because you need to, if the
$500
property
cost, it depends. If you get in Queensland, I think the fee is $50, and get it for, anyway. It's not too much money to run a trust. So speak to an accountant.
Tax returns,
and there's different trusts for different things. So just be careful on some of that stuff.
Very true.
Legal advice and accounting advice comes totally into this.
That's why, and also a big part, actually, Aaron, you and I work together a little bit, and one of the things that we do a lot is talk to each other specifically about clients, right? And that makes a massive difference. So if you've got a team, like I always say to people, like, oh, have you got a conveyancer? Yeah, I do. Great. What's their number? I want to have a chat with them. Have you got a mortgage broker? No, I'll recommend a good one for you. Because we need to our little inner circle, our little round table needs to be in communication, because what I say is going to put strain on what you want to do, Aaron. I'm going to say, no, I want to go capital growth and go after this. And you're like, hold on, Joe. No, we're going to do cash flow, because that's what's going to allow us to go to the next thing. And then the accountant is going to say, hold on, we're going to go through a trust structure. And then you're like, well, that means this. And then we all come to the conclusion, perfect. The best thing for this client is a trust structure at a $500,000 purchase price for a 4.5% yield. But if you're trying to independently have those conversations, it makes it very difficult. And now in this day and age, it is becoming very much a finance game. Buying property was the easiest thing back 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and even 8 years ago. You could continue just buy. But now you need to it used to be like 50-50, right? It used to be 50% finance, 50% property. Now it's like 90% finance and then 10% property.
I'd say it's been 90% finance for, I don't know, a bit longer than.
Fine. It's gone from 90% finance, Jeff, to 99% finance. It's all finance. It's all structuring.
Do you want to have the non-sexy slow burn approach to continuing your borrowing power to unlimited?
No, I think we'll end
more
money. I think everyone's. No, I'm kidding. Yes, we do, Aaron. We want that.
So the slow burn is you buy a property. And you get to the point where maybe you can't borrow anymore. Then you add the factor of time and repayment of debt in. And then when you've repaid the debt, you're now in a stronger asset position, and you can reborrow what you had before and do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again until you got your goal. You want the slow burn, boring way? There you go.
Yeah. And the way I like to think about it is it's up to you how fast you do it, right? How fast you get to that point. It's slow, boring, and annoying. But if you want to put some, rocket, I can't do the Spartan analogy. We're going to go to the 21st century.
Okay.
If you want to accelerate that journey, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to add value in some way. Either that's going to be a renovation, whether that's going to be a subdivision, whether that's going to be a development, to be allowing you to put money from that property, like turn $3. Yeah, there you go, David. The fast and sexy way is hard work.
Oh, that's not fast and sexy. That's still
that's fast and messy. It's fast and messy. So you've got to renovate. You've got to, subdivide. Like a lot of the properties that I'm buying right now are like subdivision properties, because people are like, oh no, I'm not a developer, I don't need to know. I'm like, no, but in 10 years time, when you're tapped out of borrowing capacity, you can't go anymore, you can have a conversation with the developer and they'll help you do it, or you'll learn how to do it, and then you'll be able to continue to go. Whereas if you just buy a standard set and forget property that just doesn't really grow and can't be subdivided, or it can't be renovated, you just sat there. You've bought the end product and you haven't got it. But if you can create the end product, if you can add another dwelling, if you can renovate, that's going to accelerate things.
For the person out there, though, I would say faster is not always better. Sometimes you need to go slow.
It's exhausting. It takes time. It takes, like, if you're a doc, like you, Aaron, perfect example, right? You're intensive care nurse. You should not be doing a renovation. Probably. You should not be doing a subdivision or a development. No, you should be, getting people to help you with those things. But if you've got plenty of time, like you only need, that's my.
Or if you're driven, if you really want to do it quickly, then it's just going to take. You're just going to have to sacrifice something. You can't. There's no pain, no gain.
So quick can be a bit. Let's take the sexy and quick. If you've got oodles of equity, you've got a bucket load of cash that's stashed in your offset accounts and things, and you've got a super, say, on the self-employed side, you've got a super profitable business that can support and sustain this and keep throwing off the profits, and or a super high PAYG wage. Yeah, it's not impossible. And I've seen it. I've worked through it with a few of my clients to buy super fast and super quick too. So it's not impossible, but you have to have the preparation factors first. People that buy multiple properties in, say, 15 months, say 10 in 15 months, they've done super proactive preparation work prior to executing the 15-month execution strategy to get it. So it's not impossible, but you've got to probably spend the time to prepare yourself to execute on that strategy.
What are those, and Joe might have asked this, but what are the key things to prepare?
Minimize any debt outside of mortgages. If you've got your own home, make sure it's probably paid off or balanced out with an offset account. Yep. Make sure your income is at a level that's going to support and sustain. If you're going to come out of the gate like that really fast, you're going to have to go for the cash flow play. If your income isn't super high, like the question that's popped up, you're going to have to go for the cash flow play. You're going to have to establish the properties and then go for the next one with the borrow-in and add in the real rent, because the valuation may not be as supportive. So you do one, you get the actual rental statement, you add that on plus the wage, and you do it again. And then you get that milestone, and then you do it again, and then you get that milestone and do it again. But if you're going to play in the 2s and 1% rental yields, you're probably not going to do it as fast, unless, say, you're a doctor, barrister, where you've got that super high PAYG over the 500 a year or 800 a year wage bracket, which obviously probably needs a recommendation to an accountant.
Yeah.
So with super high wages, we're probably looking at, like, if you want to go super fast, like it depends on whether family and other factors that come into it, but I'm seeing some people starting to sort of cap out and borrowing where they have a couple with $205,000 worth of borrowing income for so $205,000 with a family of 3 to cap out on income a little bit, where we're starting to work with them to get them up higher. But then we find too that if one partner's earning $500,000 and the other partner's at home with the kids with no income, that they can have a similar borrowing power picture to someone that has two incomes at a lower level. So it is a personal aspect here about what's the composition of family debt and other things. But so that's how it's a personal thing. We have to open up a calculator, and then I can show you how high, super high, a borrowing, how fast you can go with a PAYG income.
I just wanted to bring this one up as well. It's good old Hayden. I think maybe I'll try that in 10 years, but maybe not free. Free.
100 million. 100 million is an absurd amount of money for what? For value, the valuation of your properties, or
I
how
don't know.
much you actually have. If you are going for 100, you don't need 100 million. you just don't need a.
I didn't say it.
I know that we've said a lot of true things right now. We've said a lot of true things, but I think David takes the cake.
I wouldn't go there, David. I'm
that's
happy wife, happy life stuff here.
Some could say a husband is a liability as well. Depends on your definition of a liability.
That's right.
Definitely. This has been amazing. This has given me a little bit to chew on. Thank you very much, Aaron. Throw in any questions you guys have in the group about any of the stuff that we've covered off. And I appreciate you as well, trooping through. You've sounded, it's good that you've gone all out, gotten sick, and even added the huskiness to the conversation. So I appreciate you doing that for the show.
If there were some pre-prepared questions that here's some of the,
here we go.
But let's just have a look.
That's true. We did have people. We do ask the audience if you guys have any questions.
Yeah,
throw them out there.
This is one that often gets asked, but I think it's valuable for people that may not necessarily seen other chats that we've had. So I'm just tagging this person now, so they'll actually get that they've. So Haley asked, what is the best deposit to have for your next? And of course the answer is going to be it depends.
Yeah.
Okay. Typically, what do you start out with that? How do you?
You got to bring it up.
For an investment property, so in the main, lenders' policies is 90% inclusive of costs. So that would equate for a deposit of around, between 13 and 15% of the property's value to accommodate some of those costs. So 15% is good because we've got to accommodate some stamp duty. We've got to accommodate the lender's mortgage insurance and the costs associated to get to that. So yeah, 15 is a good number to start off with when buying that property. And then if you can support it with other properties you got, you can then re-level the loan to value ratios out to be able to lower the cost as well.
Yeah. Well, there's is the sweet spot, and not saying people should use, but the sweet spot for LMI, is that still sitting at 88% from a? Does it decrease or is it?
The way I describe the LMI band, so low LMI cost is between 80 and 85, medium cost is 85 to 90. The magical barrier has been if you scrape over the 85 or you scrape over the 90. And then when you hit into the 90s to 95s, most LMI insurers will go hell for leather at you. I've seen small cars, price of a small car being charged as LMI anywhere. I've seen it up to nearly 40, 50 grand of LMI, depending on the property price. And then I've seen it as low as a couple of grand, and in different circumstances for different people. If you need to hold on to some cash post the purchase to be able to maintain that investment property, maybe a couple of grand in LMI cost is something that's worthwhile for those particular people that need it.
And if it takes, like, one of the things is if the market's moving at 5%, like, you can't save that much that quickly, right? Like, you can't save $10,000 every single week or every single month or whatever the number is. So it might be worthwhile accepting it. Like, one of the things I say is embrace LMI when you have to, avoid it when you can. So if you can avoid it, go for it. But if you want to buy and you don't have the deposit and stuff ready, just pay the thing because your equity, your growth and equity will pay it off over time. Like, very quickly.
And so opportunity cost, we talk about it when I'm doing some business lending all the time. What's the cost of not having Coca-Cola on the shopping on the shelves at the shopping center? Can you forfeit some of your profit to be able to get in now versus not have it available as well? So and obviously business lending is priced to that. Look at the repayment versus the rate sometimes. Yes, acknowledge the rate could be a thing, but look at what it's actually going to cost you, your out of pocket, and then use your magical spreadsheet, Joe, for where is going to be not worthwhile.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. We do have a question here from the audience. How do line of credits work? Or how does a line of credit work, I think is.
A line of credit's still around? Like, I mean, I'm sure they have legacy, but I mean, have they pretty much been replaced by offsets? What are we?
Yeah, so there are, you can still get a line of credit if they are priced to its use. So a couple of the major banks, I've even seen their lines of credit up over the 6% per annum. So you've really got to do your analysis of what the repayment is, what the use of the line of credit is for you, and how that's going to function in your portfolio. I still see people come to me with setups of lines of credit splits and big credit cards and looking at old ways of trying to reduce your term of your loan and stuff. But these days we haven't seen too many lines of credits. That in some banks they're still legacy and they'll hold them in place, but I've seen those creep up. Like another example would be like St. George National Australia Bank and AMP with their superannuation loans that they don't offer anymore. You can see their price interest rate creep going up a little bit more than others to help you, encourage you to move. And lines of credit are about the same. They're still available. There's still potential uses for them, but it's very specific and it's very personal.
Yep.
Yeah. So
it's just a big credit card, basically.
What you generally see people doing now is instead of getting a line of credit, they have $100,000 worth of equity that they can accessible equity. Because if you have a $600,000 value property and you have a loan of $500,000, that is $100,000 worth of equity, but it doesn't mean you can withdraw $100,000 because the banks assess it differently. It's generally 80%, but obviously it depends on the bank and blah blah blah. It's all different. But sorry, go. Yeah.
So with your lines of credit, you only pay for it when you use it. So it's got that aspect on it. But you can also set it up as strategy. You can set it up with an interest only and an offset account. So if you're preparing to buy a property and you want to be deposit ready, and I know, Joe, having a customer that's deposit ready to hit in this market would be a good thing, yeah? So what if you engage the broker first, you look at getting your equity out for deposits and stamp duty now, and it's sitting in an account. Maybe that's a way to have that as interest only and an offset for a year or two or 5, depending on your strategy, because you can offset the equity until you need to use it. And that would be acting the same way, but in a lower interest rate environment.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, do you see that more where someone will refinance their loan, withdraw that $100,000 in equity and just plop it in their offset account where they're happy and comfortable. They're not going to touch it. They're not going to Bali. They're just going to sit that there having some powder dry. So that is, if people like, this is what I'm talking about. Hey, interest rates are rising. They're going to go up. You can't borrow as much. That means you can't withdraw your equity as much, which means you can't do that, or you're going to have a baby, or you're going to do these things. People, what smart property investors are doing that I'm seeing, not financial advice. We got to stop saying it's not financial. This is just annoying me now saying financial advice. But is they're doing that. They're withdrawing equity and putting it there to keep their powder dry so they can have access to the capital if they need it. If a property does go vacant, can I use that equity? Yes, you can. Can you, use that cash that you've just withdrawn? So it's something to, again, jump on the phone to your broker and have a chat with them about it, because you are concerned. Maybe you've got equity that you can use to be able to get you through a rough patch, and you don't have to then sell an asset to access the equity.
Yeah,
correct.
I'm still not sure what the benefit of that over using an offset account is, though, because an offset, I mean,
no, that's what I mean. That's what you would do. You would remove it from. You would fully refinance. Fully redraw it out and plop it in there like a refinance, I guess. So equity redraw.
Yeah. So it's having $100,000 loan, a linked offset with $100,000 in it at interest only. The balance doesn't go down until the interest only
nothing
finishes.
happens.
Yeah. So this is one that I think a lot of people could be. This is Surant, I think it was. He said thoughts on contractors on PAYG, but on a daily rate. So I think that one it kind of depends, doesn't it? It probably in some circumstances there are lenders that and even major lenders that like that, provided it ticks all the boxes from my understanding, Aaron.
Yep. PAYG contractors are still eligible to borrow. That's a accepted thing in the market. There's industries, teachers, some IT, all those people, they get a contract and it's on a daily rate, and they're contracted to, they actually have to go, they go into work and contract for a period of days per week, and you can annualize that as well. The length of the contract left is usually the key sticking point on PAYG contractors. So if you're coming up, for example, a teacher at the end of term 1 coming up to change the contract, some lenders I've dealt with have asked for the new contract. If you've got a 12-month contract and you're at the beginning, there's no need to look at what happens after. They look at who you're employed by, how long you're going, and how many days there. So that's standard PAYG things. Sitting there, and what was your experience before? So it's not an uncommon line of income.
Yeah, this is a good question. Talking on that, I'd be worried about the tax implications of parking equity in an offset account.
Speak to your accountant.
Yeah, if you're worried about that, speak to your accountant. But have you got anything to say to that, Aaron?
I suppose this, from a lending point of view, the setup of it, as we said before, if you've pulled 100 grand out to do, it could be 200 grand now, depending on where you're going to buy. If you've pulled out that money, you've set it up right. Say you've set it up for interest only for a period of time, and you're parking it so it's not costing you any interest. That's minimized the cost, and then I would take that information, overlay it with the accountant, and maybe you're ready to buy now. You never know what your circumstances are, but maybe you've got that money ready and you need to go out and invest.
Yeah. So the concern that the non-tax advice way to go around this would be, this is exactly what happened with me. I had a property, it grew in equity, and as soon as I withdrew the equity, the broker said, "What are you doing with that money?" And I said, "I'm going to use it to invest in property. I'm not going on holiday. What do you think?" And he's like, "Cool. You do not put that money into your PPOR account and your everyday funds, because that's where you start to mix uses and it starts to look like a personal income. What you do instead is you park that money into the offset account of your investment property." So that's exactly what I did. I have an account name that is called "Do Not Touch" in capital letters, and I can't touch that money, because as soon as I do, it'll be mixing funds and the ATO will be after me like a pack of savage dogs.
What Joe did may not be relevant to you, though.
So, definitely not relevant to your situation. Speak to your personal finance.
But in general terms, don't mix your personal spending with your property investment spending stuff. Make it easier on your accountant. Have the right lending structure, have the right offset accounts, have the right platform bank for your circumstances, and don't use the money. The other thing that we find is, how do we tick the box on lending calculators, what's investment lending and what's not investing lending as well, and that treat that differently in the borrowing power. So when you use redraw and things in investment lending, that can flow up a few red flags, especially if you put it in your investment and you pull it out and then you do something that's not investing. That can do a whole range of different things when we're trying to do borrowing power and when the account comes to have a look at it as well.
I love this question. Did you plant this one? Do you know?
Yeah,
he's like, "Oh, can you recommend a good broker for exactly what you're talking about?" I dropped a comment to your and somebody else recommended you as well.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm a qualified broker, so that's there.
Yeah.
Go to Aaron. He knows his stuff. He knows SMSF. He knows trust lending. He understands the structures, and that's one. And commercial as well. You do that also. So that's one thing to chat to. If you got value out of this conversation, do that. There's another question that's come here, which I want to answer with a spreadsheet.
You want to answer this with a spreadsheet?
Yeah, I want to answer this with a spreadsheet. But before I do, Aaron, do you want to answer this one? Our PPR is close to no more mortgage. How do I use the equity when it's this close? I'm planning to use the equity from a PPR for a franchise business. Would it be possible first time to attend in your... Oh, cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is the first time question she's answered. Would be great to know the answer to this. So
Thanks, Elsie.
Thanks, Elsie. One question just off the top of... Actually, just answer this one. Sorry, man. I know we've taken so much time now. It's been close to 2 hours.
I'm enjoying the conversation and the question, so it's great. The PPOR, close to no mortgage. Can you get the equity out? We're planning to use the equity from primary place for a franchise business. Would it be possible?
Maybe.
First time to attend
that's just a first time poster.
Okay. All right. So short answer is yes. So we can look at your circumstances, look at where you're close to no mortgage, and add some business lending on using your PPOR to help you get to the franchise level. Now, obviously, lending and terms and conditions apply, but yes, you can use your PPOR. Give you an example of a client looking to do some work around the house, some landscaping, some other things. I've got a tradie that owns a few acres, who doesn't want to be able to put another man cave on or all that nice stuff. And he also needs to buy another business. So we were able to get his home loan right at the right level and refinance it. And we're able to provide a business loan, and we're able to be able to lend anywhere up to 100% of the PPOR's value with business and home loan lending at the same time.
Is the risk in going the lender would likely require cross collateralization, from what I understand, if you're going to that? Is that, or you can ask them to do standalone?
No. This case was just single owner occupied property, wanting to buy a business. They have a business loan of X amount of dollars, a home loan of X amount of dollars, and if you add them both up, it adds up to the valuation of the bank.
They don't the collateral of the PPOR and the business.
Yeah, so it's not obviously it's a business loan with all the terms and conditions of that, and the home loan was less than 80% to start off with. Even though I've done some where they've been in mortgage insurance and topped it up with a business loan just to help support growth.
Elsie said, "Thanks a lot." There you go.
Oh, look at that! You know what? That's what we need. We need more thanks from. We ask they get an answer and they get a thank you. No, that's good. Glad we answered. No, I'm going to answer it with a spreadsheet now. This is our what if analysis calculator. You start here. I've made little videos for everyone, so you know how to do it. I'm getting very close to finishing it, so it'll be ready for Sunday when we release it. But my like this stuff here, you enter in the basic stuff. So if you're close to paying your mortgage off, you enter the value of the property. If the value of the property is 550,000, and you've got $100,000 loan on it, you can see that you have an 18% LVR, and the potential usable equity is $340,000 that you could potentially use. And then you can change P&I and interest only. But that is how you would see how much potential equity that you may have to use in your property. But as Aaron, who's keenly going to be aware of how I came up with that figure, it was based on 80% of the lending. So 80% of the equity available. So it's not necessarily guaranteed to, it's potential equity. It's not guaranteed equity because you still need all the serviceability. But if you then want the what if side of things, if you've got let's say you have a $350,000 loan, and you're currently at a 3.5% mortgage, that means you have $1,700 per month. And what does that look like now? It's negative 9,000. So if that goes to 4%, that means negative. Am I still sharing? Stop teasing,
sorry.
Joe.
I'm just playing around already. Oh, the Matrix. Yeah. Oh, geez.
There we go. And then if it gets to 5%, what does that actually look like? It goes to $12,000, right? So the difference of $9,000 to $12,000 on what's that? 2.5% interest rate, and it keeps going up. But also, if your property is growing at 5% growth rate, and you keep that equity and you minus the expenses, you're still up money. So do You do have to be very careful from a cash flow perspective, but do know if you are investing in a good quality asset, you're still making money from a net perspective overall, including your growth, but you have to make sure that you can afford to hold these properties. Because if your $15,000 is going to be too much for you, and we go to 6%, it's kind of not too good. But that's what the banks, if you purchased at 3%, the banks have already factored in and asked the question, can this person afford this property with a 6% loan? And that's how they came up with their serviceability.
Brilliant.
That's
brilliant.
What I wanted.
That's the way.
There it is.
Yeah. I just wanted. Yeah, I think we'll probably have to leave it at that, because otherwise the question, there's probably more questions that people want to ask. But so Judy said, thanks. This has been great. Love the energy and vibe. I love when we vibe. How good is that?
Yeah,
love the
vibes.
vibes.
Thanks for the spreadsheet. That's coming out Sunday. Nice formula. Look at that. He's a formula fanatic as well. We got some thank yous.
Formula One.
Formula fanatic, not Formula One. But man, Aaron, this has been fantastic. It's been, I knew you'd be an awesome guest to have on, because you've got a wealth of knowledge and you're able to articulate it in a way that makes it digestible for everyone. And I know that there's a lot of breakdowns that you went into on here, that not a lot of people are going to you're going to have to re-listen to it. So go back, have a re-listen to those sections. So if anything stood out to you, jump on it, mate. But I appreciate you. How do people get in touch with you? Like, if we want more borrowing, if we want to know how much our potential equity is, we've just done Joe's magical spreadsheet that's coming out Sunday. We've just done that, and it says I've got $250,000 worth of equity. Then what do we do?
So I'll give you a couple of comments. It's not just me in my business. I have myself as a broker, and I've got 3 other brokers, and I've got 4 support staff behind them as well. So when you come to me, it's me and my team. So the best way to contact me is that you can directly maybe I'm breaking the rules, Steph. If you press on my name and press message, I'm more than happy to converse on Facebook there. Or you can call my office, which is 0291884488. Jump on the website. You can read my little bio about how I've integrated bagpipes, which we didn't go into broking. And my team are happy to get you started on the process if you find a fit with me. But there's plenty of really good brokers out there too. So
I think you're underselling yourself. Well, you're not underselling yourself. You sold yourself perfectly, because it's good to have a team of people behind you helping on the back end side of things, because there's a lot of admin stuff that you can then, it allows you to do what you're best at, which is strategy and coming up with the structures and understanding the best way to utilize. Because one thing that I've spoken to a lot of brokers and dealt with a lot of brokers in my time, and one thing that they don't question or think about is that next purchase. It's not like you care about what this second purchase is going to be. How am I going to buy this one that's going to allow me to get to this next one and this next one? Because what you buy here determines how you get to this next stage. And that's why I love working with you, and the value that you bring to this group is awesome.
And that's my niche. I want the person that wants to do more than one, and work with them to develop further the journey.
To get to that freedom, because I think that's if we don't have some sort of goalpost there, then it's sort of, you may wake up one day and realize you've got 2 or 3 properties, but you may not sort of realize that you've reached that goal.
We've got a fan here even. Look at that. Look at this.
Haley.
Go, Haley.
Good on Haley.
And they get back to you.
All
right. You've got a minimum bar here, Haley.
No,
that's the phone.
People, you would sort of that sounds like a funny comment, but I've spoken to a lot of brokers.
Not. Yeah,
I've spoken to a lot of brokers in my time, and a key thing I think is it's vital that you have that support team, because if you don't, you can fall through the cracks quite easily with a single single broker company or single kind of without the support on the back end, because you really need that support. So
my firm is still human too. So we've got the team, we've invested in the systems and processes. So just to come out and help as many people to get that financial freedom.
Yeah,
financial freedom.
I've got more questions and more ideas. We'll have to come back at some stage.
I think we'll come back. I think we'll come back to that. Well, I think we'll end it on that. Thank you very much for all your hard work on this, mate. And let's get out there. Let's go buy a property. See you later,
everybody. Thanks for tuning in.